Hey, it's that time of year where we've got to call in all the grandparents.
Mm,
What you gonna do? How you make that work? Let's talk about that today, shall we? The Christian Principles Podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. But bear in mind, the views and opinions expressed here are those of the hosts and not necessarily of the Herzog Foundation. We have less than 10 spots remaining for the Maryland Association of Christian Schools Administrators Retreat happening on March 24th in Hartford County, Maryland. Please be sure to email mark at christianprinciplespodcast.com to register for the event. 8:30 to 3 p.m., free for Max Admin and only $20 for others. You won't want to miss this encouraging time together. Invest in yourself and your school for His glory. We can't wait to see you there. Welcome to the Christian Principles Podcast. I'm Matt George.
and I'm Mark Zockel. I'm not a grandparent yet, but today we're going to talk about all those grandparents out there who are. In fact, I just spent time with B-Dubs up in Hartford County, Maryland.
Pal.
A pal, B-Dubs. And he, the evening before, was had a granddaughter born unto him.
Congratulations,
I know, congratulations.
Mr. Wilson.
So we got in the mindset of grandparents and reminiscing, and then we see grandparents' days coming across the feed. So let's talk about grandparents. Yeah. You know, Matt, I was blessed, absolutely, to be one who my maternal grandmother was one I was extremely close to, lived with for a while. My paternal grandmother I knew since I knew my whole life, and she passed later on in my teen years. That maternal grandmother did pass. What was I? Was I a seventh grader or so? So I knew both of my grandmothers very well, and even a great grandparent on my mother's side. So I was blessed in that way, and they actually were grandparents who came to the grandparents' days when I was in school.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. How about you?
I mean,
Were you
it's
blessed that way?
one of my earliest school memories and days I always look forward to is Grandparents' Day. Not that I never got to see my grandparents
Sure.
on both sides. I mean, I grew up in a farming community. My dad's a farmer, and so his parents lived just over the hill. So I would walk over the hill to literally to grandma's house. I would go, and say my mother's parents attended church with us too. So we would be at their house on Sunday afternoons quite frequently. So extremely close to my grandparents. I loved them to death, and sad they're all gone with the Lord. But yeah, when I think back to even kindergarten, and we would do a really special thing, and I know I'm jumping in right away, but
Getting right to it.
But this always build up the anticipation for me, which is maybe why it's such a vivid memory. Is that we as the students wrote our own personal invitations to the grandparents
Ooh.
well in advance
Mm-hmm.
to when Grandparents' Day actually was. And then, I mean, it was a big day. They came to class with you. They ate lunch with you, and then we did a program for them. So it was always a big thing. But yeah, it's a big day, and I know kids and especially the grandparents really look forward to it. But it's been interesting post COVID, and I think this is one of those big things that we'll have to talk about
Sure.
in our not just COVID, but also just the changing times of school security and all those kind of things that Grandparents' Day has caused us some, not necessarily panic. Maybe we shouldn't say that.
Sure.
We don't panic about our grandparents, but definitely having to rethink a lot of things.
The actual Grandparents' Day is a holiday. National Grandparents' Day is the Sunday after Labor Day every year. I don't know of any school that actually celebrates it that early. However, I do know that there are schools who celebrate it in the early fall or in the fall, more so than post Christmas. So when you do it or when your school happens to do it, if your school happens to do it, is there anybody who has like an ethical stance against Grandparents' Day or missional stance against Grandparents' Day? I don't know.
I haven't heard of one. No, I think if anything, it's going to be all logistical. It's not going to be no way should we allow grandparents
cannot have them in here. No, we need our grandparents in. And so we're talking about Grandparents' Day. It absolutely fits the mission in so much that
Yeah.
at the very least, when I think of all of the schools I've been a part of and most of the ones I've visited and seen, they are older than 10 years old. So more than likely, the current faculty and staff makeup was not the one which generated the school. And often there are the founding fathers, the
Yes.
founding mothers
Yeah.
sitting there in that Grandparents' Day, or the ones who now this is the second generation of their offspring
Yeah.
going through the school or something. So
Yeah.
missionally, I mean, they probably help set the mission.
I was gonna say this. Both of my grandparents on both sides, their youngest went to my school. They sent them to my
Ooh.
school because that was right. They were one of the first classes, you know.
Mm.
So yeah, they invested when the school was getting started.
Mm-hmm.
Their kids graduated from the school, and now their grandkids were coming up through the school, and now their great grandkids are going up through the school. So it is definitely a generational thing, and if they weren't there for the start of the school, they've been there for a while, very likely.
Sure.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're recognizing those grandparents in a certain way on those Grandparents' Day, and you be careful not to just pass out a bunch of prizes. But there is an appreciation and recognition of those grandparents by the other grandparents, and they deserve it. They absolutely honor to whom honor is due in that situation. If there is a general assembly on your Grandparents' Day and it's not all split out, and you can honor the ones who, how many grandkids have you seen go through? How many children and grandchildren have you seen go through? Maybe been branched out to like nieces and nephews or whatnot. You probably have some significant dynasties that have been set up in certain ways to be able to celebrate that. And what a testimony that is. What a testimony,
Yeah.
and before school choice, really, before it became the popular thing to do, when they were the Mavericks, when they were the ones who were trend setting, starting these places.
Yeah.
So absolutely something to consider in that way. Anything else, when we think missional and about Grandparents' Day, anything else to consider when we think about bringing our grandparents into our school and how we should or should not based on who we are, who we set up to
Well,
be?
and somewhat hand in hand with the honor to whom honor is due. I mean, the grandparents are still invested.
Oh,
Not
sure.
not just that, yes, their grandkids are attending our school, but I'm sure they're the ones that are reaching out with perhaps generous donations.
Mm,
They may be coming and picking up kids on a regular basis
yep.
from school, so they're coming to the sporting events. They're very much involved.
Hmm.
So this is one of the things that I know teachers, from a teacher perspective, Grandparents' Day can seem rather disruptive, and I just am overly communicating with my teachers like we want these people in here. We
Hmm.
want to show them how much they are loved and appreciated, not just by their own grandkids. I actually shared this at our grandparents' day because we went around. We took a video of all the kids. Why do you love your grandparents? And
Hmm.
uh, one of the things the kids kept saying, I love my grandparents because they're nice to me. And it's like, well, and I got up in front of the grandparents. I'm like, thank you for being
Thank you for
nice to
being
your
nice to your
grandkids.
grandkids.
Like,
Absolutely, yes,
oh,
absolutely.
but of course we want to show them. We want to show them that love, and
Hmm.
it can be difficult sometimes, but
I,
we love them.
you know, I mentioned both my grandmothers. I had my father's side a step grandfather, then a grandfather. I knew both of them, and my mother's side, yes, my Pipe, as we called him.
Yeah.
He was in my life and still is in my life, and was very instrumental in the school. And one of the vans that still drives students to and from games was a donation. When you mentioned
Hmm.
donations, it made me think about that. And then we think about grandparents when we honor the grandparents who had the vision and who understand, having lived their lives, they understand the value of what it is that we are offering. And this isn't a school story, but when I was at the Wilds Christian Camp, it was presented to us during staff training week just how meaningful the camp and the camp experience was to certain people. They wanted their children and grandchildren to be there so bad. There was a grandmother who was, she was a widower at that point, and she sold her wedding set so that her grandkid could go to camp, could go to
Oh,
camp for, the week or whatever, the week that the kid could go to camp. And that was a story that was, consistently offered up to us as, this is important. And they are, because they've lived long enough to know what is of value, they know what is of value, and we should make sure that we're really paying attention to that. I know I'm preaching to the choir on that sort of thing, but
Right.
it is very much something to bring into account. You mentioned donations, but they're worth a lot more than just the money. So
Exactly. Yeah. No, they're contributing so much. And
Mhm.
and I guess when we think of mission, like even the purpose of Grandparents' Day from the
Exactly.
school's perspective,
hmm
I I mean, yes, there is a bit of that gatekeeper, like let's make sure we keep good relationships with our grandparents, but in the same at the same time, I know for me it, man, I'm trying to narrow down so much in my head right now because as I try to think through all of the benefits of having a day like Grandparents' Day,
hmm
I mean, it's extremely beneficial. Um, just from even a logistical point of view with school, we have our kids working on, a program basically, and that's helpful in many ways, to what to our program, to our academic program. And then we kind of use Grandparents' Day as a bit of like practice for our competitions that are coming up, and we highlight a lot of things that the school is doing. Even as we've said on previous podcasts, where those little things that we think it's just another thing that we do. Actually, when you put it under the magnifying glass or the microscope, it's really helpful and really important and beneficial.
It's
Um,
beneficial to know why you do it. Have you written down like you said, the purpose behind it, and you've
yeah,
thrown out some reasons why we would want to consider that. But as far as the purpose behind it, it's got to be more than advertising. It's
right.
and really it would be more. It would also be more than putting on a show, and that's worth considering, worth putting down, because when you get turned into jelly on 50, when you're not in that seat anymore, are they going to, whoever the next day is, they're going to realize what it is that has been set up, because no one remembers like a grandparent either. And so if
Right.
year by year it's not meeting the expectation of what was or what they knew the purpose to be, or that's a day you don't want to mess up.
Yeah,
Not
well,
at all.
that's also a big reason why I try not to. I with most of our things that we do at school, I'm catching myself at least year two or year three and evaluating the last few and
Sure.
saying, do we need to change something? Like
hmm
it's time, even if it's a little thing, change it up because if it just ends up feeling the exact same every single year, then it ceases to be special. So that's an important thing.
At the same time, Mr. Price's fifth and sixth grade middle school classroom for years sang Moon River at Faith Baptist School,
Well, I mean,
and it
it's a
was the
good thing
absolute
to have.
expectation.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
course, sure,
There's the traditional things that
yeah.
you can hang on to, but you can still give the overall feel.
hmm
It's different. Like, where is it going to come this time?
Yeah,
Like
true.
that
That's
kind
true.
of thing
Yeah.
can come. But I
When you're
the
thinking of the scheduling of the day, though, so is it going to be a food? We talked about COVID, how COVID affected these things. So maybe we
yeah
talk about COVID, then jump into the day. So let's go there. Let's go to COVID
yeah.
first, then come back to what we do now, maybe.
The Christian Principles Podcast is excited to share that we've joined the Herzog Foundation Podcast Network, a hub dedicated to advancing K-12 education and the Christian values we all share. The Herzog Foundation exists to catalyze and accelerate the development of quality Christ-centered K-12 education nationwide, helping families and culture flourish. One of their most impactful resources for Christian school leaders like us is the Herzog Foundation Institute. This program offers fully funded training events and retreats, enabling us to sharpen our skills without adding cost to our schools. Led by national experts, these events cover essential topics like marketing, donor development, and culture building, all tailored to the unique needs of Christian schools. Held monthly in Kansas City and other locations across the country, these events equip schools and their leaders with the tools and strategies they need to thrive. Don't miss the opportunity to explore all the Herzog Foundation has to offer. Together, we can strengthen Christ-centered education, Learn more at herzogfoundation.com. That's herzogfoundation.com. So the big struggle that I'm sure most schools will have right now is more people in the building to then, spread disease. And then also, the potential security risk that you have as well. For our school, I guess just to speak traditionally, I mean, it used to be that day where grandparents came in, I don't know, 2 hours before you did any kind of a program or something like that. And they would get around to all of their grandkids' classrooms, get to see them in their element and maybe do a project with them. Or I always, as a history teacher, it always landed this way and it was perfect. In U.S. history, middle school U.S. history, we would be talking about turn of the century inventions. And I would always have the project of kids creating an invention and they had to come in and demonstrate it. And guess what? They demonstrated it on Grandparents' Day.
Love it.
The Grandparents' Day. It was awesome. But, we've even before COVID, we were getting to that point where squishing in these grandparents in these classrooms like sardines.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, they're not enjoying it. The kids aren't enjoying it. Like, what are we doing? What
teachers,
are we trying?
Teachers never enjoyed it. They never liked it.
But yeah, so especially after COVID, we're like, well, that's not going to be a good thing anymore. So letting the grandparents in the classrooms, that's rough. I don't think we can do that. So, and we used to do a meal for them as well, that the kids would serve, and it was great opportunity to. I mean, I always loved that time because that's the time you got to talk to them. But now it's very streamlined. We're going to start the program at 11. So if you could come at 10:30, of course they show up at 9:30.
8:30.
Yeah.
Drop off the kids, stick around.
I have to really praise our grandparents this year. They did a great job. Granted, the weather wasn't super great. So, but I was opening the door 10 minutes early. That was it. Just 10 minutes early. They didn't push me for any more than that. So
they've been in the parking lot for a while though. They were in the
parking lot for a while. But they come in and we do as much as we can to make them feel welcome. We have a class is designated. The 6th grade class has it as their responsibility of greeting, walking them down. And they actually become little tour guides, which is really cool to see. And, they're looking in at the classrooms as they're passing by. They're going down to the auditorium, and then we do the whole program for them. And then we do a noon dismissal as well, because nobody's continuing school after grandparents have been in the building. So yeah, that's our approach to it. And do I want to get back to either grandparents being able to come in and participate with their kids in the classroom some? Yes, I would love to do that. Get back to a meal. Absolutely. Our facilities don't really make that a possibility right now. So that's our self limitation.
So especially coming off of COVID, that first, so my first year, my second installment, we were still under certain mandates from the COVID guidelines and whatnot, but we wanted to have Grandparents' Day, and so we were outside for Grandparents' Day, and that was interesting, man. That was pretty crazy. We had to do it in shifts. We had to bring out certain students at certain times, and give the grandparents a time to vacate the premises so the next wave could come through. And then we had the last couple of years we had a massive pavilion that had been raised, and so we were doing Grandparents' Day out there. Brought its own set of uniquenesses. And then there's always the grandparents that, even though we were trying to keep them away from the building, or at least we weren't going to open the building for classes. They wanted to come in and see me anyway, and we were open door. We weren't going to say no in that way. So they were filtering through the building themselves. But there absolutely was a respect for communicable diseases following that did play into everything that we did with Grandparents' Day post-COVID. And I don't know if that's ever going to go away. I think that will always be there, and a healthy respect should have been there in the first place, perhaps. Less so the safety, more so let's remember who we're bringing in here, and that it is a more vulnerable population with a more vulnerable population. But it was interesting. it was not something that I would have thought to have needed to encounter, but we definitely had to get flexible with how we did Grandparents' Day. But as far as gifts on Grandparents' Day, you ever give out any gifts? Of course,
Yeah.
I'm sure many of the students, teachers, perhaps they have their students create things for the grandparents. But besides a meal, is there any kind of, I don't know, a pin, something on Grandparents' Day?
I mean, personalized gifts are going to by far hit the hardest, right?
Sure.
So the things that come directly from the kids. I know one year we did personalized, like a welcome card that had a bunch of the kids all over it, or you handwritten things. But yeah, we always welcome our grandparents with like a little goodie bag that has some stuff in it for them, just to, again, express appreciation. It's nothing huge, but nothing huge.
Huge. I'm gonna hit it.
Hit it.
Boom.
Huge is a problem.
I'm gonna hit it
Huge.
again. Hit it again. Here we come.
A huge problem.
But
Oh yeah.
but that always seems to be the thing they almost forget about. You know, they're definitely there for the experience and seeing their kids, and that's, I wanted to bring that up too, because more so for me than them coming into the school, I try to make it a time where I say, grandparents, I want you to not only come to school, but I want you to plan time, like take the kids away from school and enjoy the weekend together. Like, kids, go invest in your grandparents for the weekend. Hear stories, talk to each other. Like, that dictates really where we put it on our calendar too. It's the President's Day weekend. Which this year it's fun whenever Grandparents' Day lands on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
That's a little bit extra fun because you get to show extra love
Yeah.
to grandparents. But so you have the noon dismissal and then no school on Monday. So it's an extended weekend, and I'm always very conscientious also of kids who their grandparents perhaps live too far away and they can't come. Having that longer weekend maybe gives them an opportunity that they could travel and see them, or the grandparents could come in for the weekend and actually get to see. I know for my parents, that's what they always look forward to, being able to come down and spend the whole weekend, including Monday, with us. Gives a little bit extra time to be able to do that. So that's even something else to consider.
Another consideration for Grandparents' Day, of course, would be those who don't have their grandparents there, like you said, or they just don't have the grandparents there at all. Sadly, they are no longer with us. So, in my installments, there were absolutely grandparents that we had asked previously. So the parents would do that themselves. The parents would say, "Hey, so and so, I got aunt so and so, or church member so and so coming." There was a family that was a missionary family that was from further away, and so they really didn't have any. I think he was an international international student, come to America to Bible college. And then he got married, and so his parents were abroad, and her parents were somewhere else. So they had a church member that came over Grandparents' Day, and that was their grandparent, and we got to know them pretty well actually. So I'd either the parents pre-identifying somebody who's going to be there, or maybe we're identifying people who are going to be there, and the teachers being exceptionally soft-hearted in those moments to make sure that they are the grandparents if nobody else is. So
I'm sure there's more out there that do this, but when you're a church school, be encouraging your church members that perhaps don't have any kids in school to be looking for, like, adopting a family.
Yep.
And investing in them, maybe not necessarily financially, but praying for them, reaching out to them, being an encouragement to them. I know for our situation, of the vast majority of our kids in our school are not a part of our church. So it's a great opportunity, as it is a church ministry, for church members to invest in the school and make it a part of our ministry, which it is. And I know of several individuals from our church that do that. They say, I know that this student's grandparents are going to be there. I'm going to be their adopted grandparent. I love that. We have a long history of that, but that's definitely something to consider, to put out there to the church and be reminding them, this is your school. Look for opportunities to be a blessing to the school families that we have. And here's a little way that we can do this. Grandparents' Day is coming up, and Maybe we can help them out, and they can come and ask us about some families that perhaps would be blessed with them coming and standing for their kids.
Yeah. When I think about safety on Grandparents' Day, of course, I am thinking about what do I have in place and extra eyes in the building? Am I getting security to come on site during that time, because I am again with two very vulnerable populations, and I'm increasing my footprint on and for the world to see, probably posting this on social media and other things, that I'm going to be opening my campus up. So are my safety protocols in place? Yes. Am I thinking through communicable diseases, but also just the increased number of persons on campus, and therefore parking lot security in the building, and am I alerting my local first responders or police officers and whatnot, hey, we are having this event, and so on and so forth. Make sure those things are part of your planning as well.
Yeah, the biggest thing, apart from just having the mass chaos of people in your building, is dismissal, because it's real easy for a grandparent to say, well, come on, Johnny, I'll take you home. Let's go. And then kid disappears. Nobody knows where he is. Mom pulls up to, take him home. And we're like,
Yeah. So I was going to say I had 2 points left to make. First was going to be security. Second was going to be make sure dismissal is very clear.
Yeah.
It'll never be clear for the grandparents and the students, but make sure your faculty and staff know very clearly what you're going to do. And one of the ways you can do that is dismissing everybody back to their classroom. And maybe that day is a dismissal from the classroom via a very well planned checkout system from the homeroom. Or you know what, everybody, we love you. We want you to feel loved and welcomed, and that we were hospitable to you. But to be safe, we're dismissing you out to the parking lot, and we will go through our usual departure procedures, and we will call your student out to you. I know that they're with you right now. I see that. I get that. I understand that. But they're going back to their homeroom. I need you guys to go out to the parking lot, and we will do what you've seen us do 100 times. So just make sure you think about that. And even if that is breaking some kind of, tradition where you were, that's inhospitable, it might have to be what it is so that
just
you can sleep
works
at night. Yeah.
Find what works for your school. It's never going to be perfect, but it's a thing where everybody understands the expectations. It can be executed efficiently. So, find what works for you. And like Mark, like you just said, if it is not the most desirable, but it's the safest, everybody is going to be happy when we're safe. So let's just go with that.
Anything else to say about Grandparents' Day, Matt, besides you love it, and besides that it's a great time? You get to see your mama on Grandparents' Day?
The one thing I always think of as an administrator, let me just put it this way, that when the kids are up there, even though I've seen them practicing 1,000 times, I'm dreading becoming a grandparent, because I'm already getting super emotional whenever I see these kids doing these things. and I'm just thinking about, the grandparents are so proud of them, and I see them, and I'm just there bawling my eyes out. Like, man, this is going to be rough when I have grandkids.
Oh, man.
I'm never coming to this.
I would think on those days, it doesn't matter what these kids do. We could have never practiced, and these kids could have gotten up and made up something on the spot. Like when my daughter comes and does a performance for me in the living room, and hey, Dad, we're going to have a show now. And she sings a song, and she's looking at the couch. She's talking about how, and then God made the couch, and we are going outside because there's a window. And she's just, making this up as she's saying. She could do that, and it would be applause. It would be utter rapture and celebration of her, because it's Grandparents' Day, and that's what they're good at. Okay, we got to move along to our Christian administrator spotlight. And Matt, tonight I'm going to send it your way, because we're going to talk about Mr. Sherwood Edwards from Mount Carmel Christian, and that is in Mount Pleasant. So Mount Carmel Christian is in Mount Pleasant, PA. Yes. That's too many mounts for me.
There's a lot of mounts. I mean,
too much elevation change.
Here in Western Pennsylvania, there's a lot of mounts. Although if you're from Western United States, you're like, those ain't mountains, those are hills. But whatever. We roll with it. But yes, Mr. Edwards Sherwood is heading up a school that I had to be separated from high school for a little bit to appreciate. Because in high school you get those rivals, right? This was one of those rival schools. But at the same time, you look back, when I look back in high school, I'm very thankful for not only the competition, but the camaraderie that we were able to have with other schools through athletics. But I know of Mount Carmel, not only that, but I went back to Mount Carmel when I was traveling as a recruiter for my college. And I was like, we're going to go there. We're going to see how they're doing. And they're doing a fantastic job. And I know right now they're one of the schools in Western PA that are still going strong. And I'm thankful for many people in that ministry that I've come to know and love over the years.
Sure.
But Sherwood Edwards, heading up that ministry, just hats off. I'm just thankful to know that there are those there that are still strong, still producing wonderful products, if we can say that, of our students. Because even my nieces and nephews are still back there in Western PA, and I watch them on the the live Facebook Live with basketball games and whatnot, and Mount Carmel is a refreshing one to watch, and I'm thankful for that, and I accredit a lot of that to the leadership there. So,
all right,
so let's pray.
Yeah, let's pray for him. Why don't I pray for him? Because you just talked about it for a while. Father in heaven, we think of Mr. Edwards right now. We think of his team. We think of the time that he has put in to being the principal there at Mount Carmel. We think about the time he is he is using now to lay up treasures in heaven. Because this is what he's doing in this ministry, in this work. Might he recall that and be encouraged by it, be encouraged by these remembrances of Matt even over the school, and might the stories that he has to share with his kids, his grandkids, with the people who come into contact with him in his building day by day, might he be encouraged, might he remember the mission and pursue excellence through it. We love you. Amen.
Amen.
All right, Matt, we need to wrap this one up. So
we love you, grandparents.
We love you, grandparents. Thanks for growing with us today.
Could we ask you a favor? Please help us grow our channel by clicking on the plus follow button at the top of the screen on Apple Podcasts or the follow button on the main podcast page on Spotify. Taking this step helps boost our ratings, but more importantly, gets us in more Christian school admins' ears. Also, it'll keep our latest content in your feed. This little action could help us take this podcast a long way.